Hi, you clicked on this video for one out of these two reasons. One, to be nice, or two, because your gecko's tail fell off. I'm sure you're aware that geckos can drop their tail on command. They can just release it, and it should grow back, hopefully, maybe, probably not, maybe. And more common than not, specifically for leopard gecko and crested geckos, their tails drop off surprisingly normal. It's not a good thing, it's not meant to happen, but it's just something that is common. That happens because either the caretaker grabs them too hard on the tail or they frighten them, then that will cause the gecko to just release their tail and they don't have a tail. Fortunately, leopard geckos do grow their tails back. Not the same for crested geckos. Either way, I'm going to be discussing a step-by-step process on what to do after your gecko's tail falls off to ensure that it stays healthy and doesn't get infected, of course. But do keep in mind, its tail will never be the same. Alright, step number one, pull the tail off. Alright, step number one, you're going to want to make your gecko a quarantine enclosure. It doesn't need to be complex at all, it's kind of the whole point. You want it to be as simple as possible. Use paper towel for the substrate. Just like one hide would do good. And what you want to do is just make sure it's clean, everything's nice and clean. That's the purpose. You're going to have to act fast and make a quarantine place as quickly as possible because you do not want to put your gecko back into its original habitat, because obviously that's not a very good suitable place for a gecko that just lost their tail. The first step, or the first couple steps even, are going to be the most stressful for you because unless it's happened before, which it's kind of sad if it's happened before, but hopefully this has been your only time, and if it's your only time, make sure not to do it again. But either way, it's going to be the most stressful part of the whole process because you have to act fast or else it could get infected. Alright, step two, your gecko is in the isolation quarantine enclosure area. During this time, I suggest you clean out the old enclosure. Just make sure there's no dirtiness anywhere. Just make it really clean for when your gecko comes back into it, it'll be all ready. Alright, now step number three, which technically should have been step number two. You're going to want to check back at the gecko to see if its wound is bleeding. Well, it's not really a wound. I don't know what you would call it. But yeah, where the tail fell off, you want to make sure if that's bleeding. You don't want it to be bleeding. And just check if it's clean. It should be like a nice bright pink. And then, yeah, just make sure it looks nice and clean. If it looks clean and as it should look, I suggest leaving the gecko for a few days, and then after that, give it a bath, but not really a whole bath, just kind of wash it down with like a paper towel or something. Just kind of wipe around the gecko, just to make sure everything's extra clean, and then just let it heal. Now your gecko will probably be a bit more scared and more feisty after it loses its tail, because you can imagine it just lost its tail, it probably will be a bit more feisty, but yeah. Also, I forgot to mention that you should probably throw away the tail. I don't know why you wouldn't. And step number four is kind of just a slow, steady pace. You're going to want to take it nice and easy to the road to recovery. And this is kind of going to be a bit, like, you might be a bit impatient and just want to put it back in its old enclosure, but you should probably still keep it in the quarantine enclosure until it grows somewhat back, and then that should be safe to put it back into its new enclosure. Or not new, but original enclosure. But I would still like to keep it in the quarantine enclosure just to be safe. Now, I'm not really speaking from hands-on experience because I've currently never had my gecko lose their tail, and that's not a bad thing, of course. I'm just getting this from research, and it's something I would definitely do if I happen to make my gecko lose their tail, which hopefully never happens, but you never know. Also, your gecko may or may not eat after the few days after it drops its tail, just because it might get a bit just too scared and just not want to eat. It might just want to hide, and that's okay. Just let it do that. It should come out. It's not going to starve to death, hopefully. Just know that if your gecko drops its tail, it's not the end of the world. Also, I want you to keep reminding yourself that the tail will never be the same, sadly. It also might not even grow back. I've known of many instances where the tail kind of just stubs over and that's all it does. Sometimes it doesn't even grow back at all, it just kind of stubs over, like what I said. But other times it can grow basically back to what it used to be, but obviously it's going to look a little bit imperfect. You can tell that its tail fell off. And that's basically it. I would just say be more careful next time, because if it happens again, that's really bad. Because I don't know if you knew this, but geckos store all their fat and all their nutrition and all their vitamins and all their supplies basically in their tail. So the fatter the tail, the healthier it is. The fatter the tail, and if that fat tail drops off, that's bad. You're gonna want to feed it more calcium and more vitamins and just want to plump it back up because all their nutritional stuff and all their protein and all their stored up fat is gone now. So that basically wraps up everything for today's video. Hopefully I'll post again soon. And yeah, I'm the Reptile Guy, and thanks for watching. Also, sorry I haven't uploaded in a while. Goodbye.